Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for logging in early if you did. Sorry for the slight delay. I hope you had a chance to check out the upcoming webinars that I've put on the screen here. I've got two great sessions. The next session is on managing and troubleshooting cluster. It's been presented by Saeed Jafar Hussain, who's an Oracle ACE Director. Saeed was also Oracle Magazine's DBA of the year 2011, so hugely experienced, and he's run some good sessions in the past, so please do sign up for that one. And then on May the 8th, we've got a member of the Oak Table and another Oracle ACE Director called Randolph Geist. You may have attended the two webinars that he's done previously for Redgate on the cost-based optimizer. This time Randolph's going to be looking at analyzing and troubleshooting Oracle parallel execution. So again, another fantastic webinar, and I would definitely recommend you sign up for these two. You can find out more information about them, and you can also register for them as well at redgate.com/Oracle webinars. Incidentally, also at the webinars section of the Redgate website, the Oracle webinars section of the Redgate website, you will be able to get access to all past webinars. There's well over 30 there now on a range of topics, so please do check out the archive as well. Today's session, as you can see from the title, is on easy Oracle database source control. If you use Twitter or another social network, please do share what you're learning with the community. If you are on Twitter and you want to mention Redgate, I've got the Redgate account up there at Redgate, hashtag Oracle, hashtag Redgate. Hopefully the stuff that you are learning, you do want to share with the community, please do. This webinar is brought to you by the Deployment Suite for Oracle and Redgate software. So I'm the presenter today. I'm James Mercer. You may attend some of the educational webinars that I host. I mentioned a couple at the beginning. I normally act as the host and then pass over to one of the experts to go through the content. I'm presenting this session, so if you haven't attended one before, here's a little bit about me. So I'm the creator and editor of allthingsoracle.com. I work for Redgate Software. I'm a petrol head and a foodie, so I think two things that a lot of people are interested in, particularly people that I seem to talk to on Twitter. If you're into chess, I am too. Please do drop me a direct message if you're connected with me on Twitter at All Things Oracle, and I would like to hear your response to my first move, which will generally be E4. I'm also learning the piano at the moment, which is pretty tricky, but I'm enjoying it. That's a little bit about me. So before we actually get going with the main session, you will be on mute for the duration of the event. If at any time you can't hear me or the sound goes a bit strange, please do let me know by sending me a message in the chat box or in the questions panel. There will be a Q&A session at the end, but as I go across or as I go along and I come across particular things, please feel free to put your questions in the question panel in advance, but I won't answer those till the end. This session is being recorded, and I will send you a link for where you can get the recording afterwards. I mentioned at the beginning that the session was brought to you by Redgate. You may have heard about Redgate. You may not have. Hopefully you have. Hopefully you checked out the web pages when you registered for this particular session. Redgate is primarily a database tools vendor. We produce tooling for Oracle database developers, DBAs. We produce tooling for SQL Server as well. What I've got up on the screen here is the logos, I guess, of the products that we produce for the Oracle database. Our main product set fits into the deployment suite for Oracle. We've got 3 tools in there. Source Control for Oracle is a tool that we're going to look at today. There are 2 other tools. Schema Compare for Oracle, which, as you can imagine, helps you compare schemas across environments and deploy schema changes. And Data Compare does a similar thing for table data. So two great tools. They all work very well together and to help you to compare schemas, compare data and table, and to deploy changes, and particularly with the new product, deploying changes with source control in place as well. Please do check them out at redgate.com/Oracle. Okay, so on to the main presentation now. So the title of this presentation is Easy Oracle Database Source Control. I'm going to be showing source control for Oracle's new product by Redgate, as I mentioned before, that fits into the deployment suite for Oracle. So this session is primarily a demonstration of the capabilities of this product. Before I get started, I think it might be quite a good idea, or I thought it would be a good idea, just to give us a bit of an outline of what source control for Oracle has been designed to do. So any of you that are using source control for your database code at the moment, you'll probably find that it can be quite tricky just to get those objects out of the database. It's very different to application files. You think the source control handles files, so it's very easy to put files under source control, but it's a little bit more tricky to put database objects under source control. So that's one side of it. But there's also the other side, that as you're as you're checking in changes to source control, you want, or your team is checking in changes to source control, it would be good to be notified of when things are going in. So what source control for Oracle does, as you work on the database, just using your own editor, this is a standalone product. It's going to monitor and keep an eye on what's going on, what the differences are between the database and the source control repository, and then it's going to notify you, as you'll see in the demonstration, that things are out of sync. After that, you'll be able to review the changes and review what's happened or the work that you've done before you check it into source control. But more importantly, source control for Oracle is going to make the whole process of checking those changes into source control very, very easy. So I hope that was a nice introduction and give you a bit of an idea of what I'm going to go through today. Please give me a couple of seconds just to bring my remote desktop over. Hopefully there won't be too much of a delay or any technical issues, but please bear with me whilst I do that, and then I'm going to crack on with the demonstration. Okay, so as you can see, I've got Oracle SQL Developer open. So this is the IDE that I'm using. For the purpose of this demonstration, if you imagine that I'm a developer on a team, and the team, we're working on an application called widget, so the widget application. As you can see here, I've got my schema open, and I've got a table open here. And this is a table that I've been editing. So I've made some changes to this table, and what I want to do is put these changes into source control. I'm using Subversions. I'm using SVN as my source control system. And as I mentioned before, it's very easy for the guys that are working on the application files, to check their changes into source control. It's just a simple file. But what options do I have to check in the database objects, and how can I do that? What's the easiest way for me to do that? I guess I'd like to ask the audience here how you would actually do this. And I'm going to bring up a poll now. And if you could just spend a couple of minutes just answering the question here. So I'm interested to know how you currently source control database objects. Okay, so the poll should be up on the screen here now, and this is, how do you currently source control your database code? Thank you for voting so far. I'll just give it a few more seconds. We seem to have got quite a good number. It'd be great to hear your feedback. So if you haven't voted, please do so. Please just click on one of the options here. Okay, the poll is now closed, and I'm just going to share it on the screen with you. I'm sure you'll be interested. So, not surprisingly, the highest number is actually an in-house manual process. There is a high number for third-party software as well, and it would be great to, if anybody wouldn't mind sharing kind of which products they do use in the questions panel. That would be something I'd be interested in understanding. But the manual process is certainly something that we heard quite a lot as we were developing source control for Oracle. And I guess the difficulty is with a manual process is there are obviously a risk of sort of errors, and it can take quite a long time. So it can be very time consuming to get the objects in. If we actually look at some of the options we have immediately available to us in SQL Developer, we could, for this particular object, we could export the DDL. So then we've got a script file, so we've actually got a file there. But that still doesn't solve us. We still have to then check this into source control. And what about if other people on the team are making changes to the same objects, the same tables? How do we track all of those changes? So it's going to rely on quite a lot of communication, and we're going to have to put certain processes in place. SQL Developer does have a menu, a versioning menu here, but really this doesn't bring any benefits to us. This is just simply enables us to use the functions of the SVN client without leaving SQL Developer. So it still doesn't solve our problem. We still have the problem, firstly, of converting these objects into files and then putting them under source control, but also managing the team and letting the team know what changes have been made. So back to the work that I was doing. We've got this table open, and I just want to draw your attention to my taskbar, and we can see we've got a little icon here, a blue icon, which is source control for Oracle, but it has a red dot on it. If you remember in the diagram that I showed at the beginning, that's because I have source control for Oracle installed, and it's monitoring the database and the Subversion repository. It does also work with TFS as well. And there was a question that's come up about, does it work with Toad? When I bring the product up in a moment, it is a standalone application, so you can be editing the database in any program that you like. So it's great for teams that are using multiple IDEs. This is not a plugin for SQL Developer, for Toad, or for Pure SQL Developer. It will enable any members of your team to work in those IDEs and make changes. Okay, sorry, I just noticed that I still actually had the poll results up there as well, so I do apologise for that. So what I was going over here is on the bottom of the screen here, we can actually see I went over a couple of points. I do apologise. I still had the poll up, so I went over a couple of points. All I was showing is that we could export the DDL for this particular object. We could also use the versioning menu in SQL Developer if we're using SQL Developer. But as I mentioned, this just allows us to use the client commands, the Subversion client commands. It doesn't actually help us with source controlling these particular objects. So back to where I was. We've been working on this. I've been working on this particular object. Because I've got source control for Oracle installed, it's picked up that there are differences between the database and the repository, and it's notified me on the taskbar. So I've got this little red dot here. This is indicating that the database and the repository are out of sync. I can click on this icon, and we've got what's known as a jump list here, and I've got one project with new changes. So I'm going to click on this project, and it's going to launch source control for Oracle for me. But more importantly, it's going to take me directly into that project. It's probably a good idea at this stage to explain what I mean by a project. Here's a source control project list. Basically, a project is just a link, a link between the database and a repository. So I've linked my database, which is called the obstacle database. I've specifically linked this schema here, widget James, and I've got a repository, my source control repository. I've got a folder here called widget. So that's what the project is. But as you can see, I've got 5 changes, one of them being the widget prices table that I was looking at. That's the one I've been editing, and we can see in the side-by-side differences viewer at the bottom, that what I've actually done is added a new column, and that's highlighted. That's been highlighted here. We can see this is the database on the left-hand side, and on source control, it doesn't have that column. So it's great. I can see exactly the work that I've been doing before I check it into source control. I can see importantly, not just the work that I've been doing, I can see the differences on the database and in source control. And I can do this for all of the objects. We've got a package here. We've got, so editing a table and a package, and I've got a couple of new objects. So I've got a new table here called widget locations. Obviously, there's nothing in source control. This is a brand new object. So it's showing me that this is what I'm going to put into source control. At the moment, they're all checked. They're all ticked to go in. I can tick individual ones if I wanted to as well. Great thing about source control for Oracle is it's identified that this particular object that I've checked, this widget package here, does reference other objects. There are dependencies on this object, or this object is dependent on another object, and I can click on select reference objects, and it's going to tick all those objects for me, as we can see here. Okay, I'm actually going to check in all of these objects, and I'm just going to type a quick message. Okay, obviously it's very useful to put in a message. I'm just doing something quickly for the purpose of this demo, but you'd put in something a little bit more useful. And those objects are now in Subversion. So the difficulty of actually converting the objects into files and putting them in source control is done literally in a couple of clicks. I type the message in and I click check in. I did obviously review them, which is a very useful thing to do as well. But it's very, very easy. I hope you agree. It's very, very easy to put those objects in source control. We've got another tab up here, which is the history tab. And this is going to store a complete history of everything that I've been doing with this particular repository, all of the objects that I've checked in, and we can see these objects here. This is what I've just done, checking widget objects. It's got the date, it's got the revision number from Subversion. I've got my username here as well. If I actually scroll down the list, as you can imagine, I've been using this account for lots of demonstrations, but one of my colleagues here has also made some changes. So when you're working within a team, you're going to be able to see a list of all of the team members and all of the objects and the changes that they've checked into source control. We've got the comments here, and more importantly, like before, we can actually see the DDL side-by-side view of these objects before and after, and again we can see exactly what's happened. And this particular one that I can see here, this actually looks like a bit of an error, so I should probably go back into SQL Developer and I should change that, because that's clearly not right. Okay, and we had a number of new objects here. So we had this widget location. So this was a brand new table that we added. I'm just bring up the my repository browser. Just need to refresh it here, and let's go into tables. So this is showing you the hierarchy of the folders and the scripts that source control for Oracle has created for you. And let's go under tables, and we can see that we've got here the same revision number. This is the new table. If we wanted to, we could have a look at that as well. But more importantly, it's converted that table into a SQL file and put it into the repository. So I just wanted to show you that, because it's quite nice for you to see exactly what happened there, because the tool does it very, very quickly. Okay, so let's go into SQL Developer. I've got a script here which I'm going to run, so I'm just making my life easier. But hopefully this is going to resolve the error that I've just highlighted. Okay, let's go back into source control. Go to the check-in screen, and we can refresh that. Okay, so we've got two objects here, and the work that I'm doing, I'm actually going to drop this widget locations table, and let's look at widget packages. And because I was able to check that error, I can now edit it and then check it into source control. The great thing is that we're using source control, so this does enable us to keep a copy, I guess, of the database, a central copy of the database that we can see changes, and we can easily manage these changes. Once again, I'm going to check those files in, and we can see again that they've gone through. Okay, so I hope that gave you a good idea of actually how the product works. So just to recap, that if you imagine that I was working as a developer within a team, I'm working on the database, and source control for Oracle is enabling me to check these changes in really, really easily. Any changes that I check in, source control for, any changes that I make, to the database that I haven't yet checked into source control for Oracle is going to pick that up, and it's going to notify me on the taskbar and also within the product itself. So on the check-in screen, it will show me changes that have been made to the database that haven't yet been checked in. As I'm working with a team of people, all of my team members' changes are going to come in here as well. So I can very easily see what people are working on, and but more importantly, what they're working on, which hasn't yet been checked in to source control. And if something was to go wrong with my application, which was down to one of the objects, I could go into the history and I could see what that change actually was, what was the last change that was checked into source control, given that we're using source control to then between development and test, for example. For those of you that are used to source control, you may be thinking, or for those of you that are working with source control rather, and are working in a shared environment with one central database or one central schema that all the developers are working on, you may have thought about the idea of setting up a distributed development environment, or an environment where the developers have local copies of the database, or maybe they have a private schema on a central database. There are obvious benefits to working in this way with source control, in the sense that as developers make changes to their schema, or to their local copy of the database, they can check these changes into source control, and source control can be the central copy of the database, which other developers can then update their local copy with these changes before they start work. So what I want to show you before I end this session is a way that source control for Oracle will help in that scenario right from the start. It'll actually help you set up a distributed environment and then manage changes in that way going forward. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up a new project. This will also be useful for you to see actually how easy it is to get started with the product as well. Okay, so I'm going to create a new project. So we've got a 5-step wizard here. It's a very quick wizard. It's going to connect to my database. I'm using the same database again, which is obstacle. But this time, I'm going to log in as a new user. Okay, so my user name is Michael. We're going to be using the same source control repository, obviously, as what I was using before. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm using Subversion. I could also be using Team Foundation Server as well. But this time I'm working on a schema called widget Michael. This is the scripts folder that I was checking in objects to beforehand. So I'm going to use the same one. And we've just got a little summary of what's happened. So again, obstacle database, widget Michael schema is mapped to the widget folder in my repository. I'm going to create this project. So what's different, as you'll probably notice straight away, is before, as I was making changes, source control of Oracle was picking up that there was a difference between database and the source control and the repository, and telling me to check in these changes to source control. But this time, if I go back to SQL Developer again and actually open up this widget Michael schema, you can see that it is a completely empty schema. So what I'm going to try and demonstrate here is two things. We could be moving, the team could be moving to a more of a distributed environment. So we'll each have our own dedicated schema rather than working on a shared schema, a shared database. But or we could all be already working in this way, and Michael is actually a new member to the team. I want to get him up and running with the latest copy of the database. Importantly, get him up and running with a copy of the database from source control. This is where we've been checking in our changes, so we know that this should be the most up-to-date version of the database. I've obviously already created a shell of this schema, but now I need to populate the tables and the packages, procedures, etc. So this is what this status means and what this tab here that we didn't look at before. So this is the Get Latest tab. And we can see we've got a button here which is Apply Selected Changes to the database. If you're working in a distributed environment already, as you check in changes, other team members will be able to pick them up using the Get Latest tab and apply them to their database before they start working on them. So click on this button here. So we're going to apply the selected changes to the database. So we'll go through it again. Let's go back into SQL Developer and let's refresh tables, and we can see we now have the tables that I had worked on originally, and I checked them into source control, and now I've got Michael up and running with a new copy of all of these objects. But importantly, he's got the latest version. He's got the version of these objects out of source control. Both Michael and I can now continue working as we normally would. Source control for Oracle is going to pick up any changes we make to the database, and we can very easily check them in to source control. Okay, so just to recap, so source control for Oracle enables easy database source control with SVN and TFS. It is a new product, and our support is starting with Subversion and TFS. As more and more people use it, as more and more people download the trial, as more and more people share their feedback on what they need this product to be, we will hopefully look to add support for additional source control systems if you're using another one. It avoids human errors and removes manual processes, so it speeds up the process of checking objects in to source control, but also gives you much better visibility over what's going on and a history of the changes as well. It's an integral part of the deployment suite for Oracle and works with tools like Schema Compare for Oracle, which can compare a database to a scripts folder and actually generate the necessary scripts to update the database environment as well. So if you're looking to migrate changes from development to test, Schema Compare for Oracle will manage that side of things. You can download a free 28-day trial at redgate.com/source control for Oracle. Please note the hyphens there, or you can go to redgate.com/Oracle, and it'll be very quick for you to navigate to the source control page there. So I hope that was useful. I hope that's given you enough information to go and try out the product. Please do get in touch with me on Twitter, or if you go to redgate.com/Oracle, you'll see there's a contact page there. If you do have any feedback or any questions after the session, but I would like to take your questions now. I'm just going to bring up the question panel and see if there has been any questions in advance, but please do ask me your questions now. I'd be very happy to go through any part of the presentation again. Okay, thank you for your questions now. So the first question is, will it work against a test and live database? It will do, but certainly we would recommend that you use this within your development environment, in particular using source control within source control. So as a process, as a system within your development environment. I guess mainly because once you finish the development, I guess the idea of source control is to help you manage changes as you're making them through development. Once you finish that development, you then really want to migrate the kind of final version, I guess, of the application of the database code into test. So then test it, and if anything needs changing at that point, you're likely to go back into development to do that. So we'd recommend installing this product within your development environment. Next question, do you need to keep source control for Oracle running to get notifications of other changes? You do need to keep source control for Oracle open to get the changes on the taskbar. It's not going to take up a huge amount of CPU. There are options in terms of how often it polls the database within an XML file. You can change that if you wanted to. Obviously, the more often that source control for Oracle polls the database, there is potentially it could slow things down again, but that really does depend on how often you are polling the database. But you have options there. Of course, you always have the option of actually go into the application itself and refresh it to see new changes that other team members have been working on that haven't yet been checked in. But in answer to your question, you do need to keep the application open. Next question, are there plans to have database data as part of source control? It's a very good question. We obviously have schema compare, but we also have data compare as well, to compare table data and to deploy table data. Currently, we just support schema objects with source control for Oracle, but we have a product for SQL Server database which does support data as well. So it's certainly an area that we will be looking into, and hopefully, if lots of people are using the product and they tell us that they need us to support data, then that will help us add this support more quickly. Next question, does something need to be installed on the database server? No, this is a client application. I've got it set up. So I could use a manual connection. I was able to connect nice and quickly because I have an Oracle client installed on this machine as well. But it's a client application. It's not a server application. It's just connecting to the database. So it's a link between the database and your source control repository, I guess. Next question, does a suite need to be integrated with Oracle SQL Developer? No, it doesn't. The great thing about this product is it's a standalone application. The application is focused on enabling you to source control database code easy, regardless of which IDE, which development IDE, development environment you're using. More importantly, it enables, if you've got teams or team members all using different IDEs, we don't want to say, well, you have to use this particular product. You can use any one you like and just launch our application to help with the source control side of things. There are a couple of quite technical questions that have come in. So if I'm unable to answer your question now, I will get back to you. So please do add a question in. I can consult with one of the developers here, and I will email you directly after the session. So okay, so the question here, how can you compare a database to a particular version within source control versus the latest version in source control? So what source control for Oracle is doing, it is looking at the latest version in source control based on the scripts that source control for Oracle has created. So that's what it's doing. So it's helping you manage and update the actual scripts themselves. So trying to think of a sort of an easy way to kind of demonstrate this. But I guess the important thing to think here is that it's not looking at different versions in source control. It is looking at the latest version based on what it is comparing the database against what it's already created. So if I bring up the repository here, so of course we could use, I've got Tortoise SVN as my client, so I could open up the repo. I've got the repo over here, but I could actually go to the working version on my machine rather than the repository, and I could look back through past revisions at the times that I've checked new objects in. But source control for Oracle is actually looking at the repository itself. So it's specifically looking at the latest version of the repository, which we're looking at here. At the moment, this has just got a number of objects that I've checked in myself, but this would include check-ins by other team members. So I think in that case, I mean, it's not going to give you the ability to compare it against a particular revision. Although, obviously, what you could do is go into the history, because this history is so this probably does actually answer your question. I do apologise, because we've got the list of different revisions here, and we'll be able to see what was different. I mean, this again is at the time, so we're not looking at the latest version of the database here. We're looking at a point in time here, and this was the database that we've got on the left-hand side, and this was the changes after we checked them in to source control. The important thing is, though, it's going to enable you to keep the latest version of the source control up to date and keep the database in sync. So we've got a question here: how does the suite work with different environments? So dev, QA, staging, and production. The best place really to find out information about that is on our website. So I'm just going to bring this up now. Okay, so if you go to redgate.com/Oracle, it's going to take you to this page here. There's a video overview of the deployment suite for Oracle, and you can also then go to individual pages for each of the products contained within the tool. So, for example, the product we were looking at was source control for Oracle. I'm now looking at schema compare for Oracle. I'm just showing data compare for Oracle here as well. Both schema compare for Oracle and data compare for Oracle enable you to compare your environment, so you can easily compare development with test with QA, QA with live, etc. So you can see a side-by-side diff of the differences in the schema objects and table data between those environments. But you can also use the product to generate scripts to update those changes. You can use the software itself to update the changes, or you can export the scripts and have them reviewed by the DBA, or use your IDE to update them. So I would definitely recommend checking out the products in the deployment suite. So redgate.com/Oracle, and it's going to take you to this section here. Or if you go to redgate.com, it's very easy to navigate from the products menu here. You can see all of the Oracle tools on the bottom left-hand corner. A question here: how does it perform with very large schemas? We've done a reasonable amount of testing ourselves, as you can imagine, but also we had a beta program running for a number of months before we launched the product. We had some great people there that really helped us, and since we've launched the product, we've got a number of our existing customers using it. We've also got people downloading it, and they're working with pretty big environments, but also working with environments with multiple schemas as well. One thing that I realized I didn't show on the product is that if we go back to a project here, we're actually looking at, we've got one schema here. I could, however, create a new product, and I can add multiple schemas to a project as well. Please do download a trial, test it out. I guess within a sandbox environment. If you could somehow replicate the size of your production schemas, and try them out in your development environment. It'd be great to hear your feedback on how it performed for you. Please do let us know. There are options to give us feedback, particularly when you download the product from our website. Can you specify a source control work item when checking in? Not currently. It really is at the moment. It's the benefit here is enabling you as you're checking in to be able to put in a message, which is going to, as you saw in the repository when I looked at the repo browser, it's going to pull that message across. I think there's a huge amount of additional features that we could put in here, and that really will rely on people giving us feedback. So thank you for the feedback there. It's something that I'll certainly add to the list. How does it integrate with TFS? It will work in essentially the same way. As you saw when I set the project up, I was able to choose whether I was using Subversion or I was using TFS. You would need to either have Visual Studio or Team Explorer installed, so you do need a client, but essentially it's going to give you all the same flexibility, same functionality as I was showing here. I think one of the benefits here really, and certainly the feedback that we've got, is that by using source control for Oracle, actually the development team isn't I guess sort of exposed to a lot of the sort of inner workings of whichever source control product they're using. You can just carry on as a developer. You can just carry on working within your environment. You can carry on working on database objects. You haven't got to start thinking about working with objects and working with script files and converting objects to script files and updating script files in the repository and somehow trying to get that back into the database. You can just carry on working the way that you'd normally work. The source control for Oracle is going to do all of the hard work for you. It's going to do the conversion for you. You can use this lovely little interface here. We can look back through the history. You really haven't got to worry too much about whether it's an object or whether it's a script folder. Again, another question here, can it work with Toad? Yeah, the important thing is to remember that this is a standalone application. So please ignore the fact that I was using SQL Developer. That's just the IDE that I have installed on my machine. I could be using Toad here. My team member that I brought in, Michael, he could be using SQL Developer. We could have another team member using Peel SQL Developer. The important thing is we can all be using source control for Oracle to manage checking in our objects into source control. Can you filter out certain types of objects from the source control process? This is a very good question. So as you're making changes to your database, source control is going to pick up any objects that have been changed. With the initial commit, I guess when you first set this up, it's going to show you, like when I got Michael up and running, it's going to show that I've got all of these new objects. So none of these objects are in source control. But at any time, whether I'm making edits or whether I'm checking in like a whole new schema, I do always have the ability, if you remember, to use this checkbox here to select which objects I want to put in or not. But in terms of actually kind of a filter beforehand to filter out particular type of objects, it won't do that. You will need to decide on that during checking. So a question here, does source control for Oracle show DDL scripts required to sync a higher environment with the source control version? So I'm guessing what we're talking about here is if we've got source control in place for development, and then we want to migrate the schema from source control to, say, test, you would be able to use source control for Oracle to update the database from the source control repository, like I did. I was just populating a schema on my development environment. Again, I sort of answered this question earlier on. I tried to answer this question earlier on. We would recommend that you use source control for Oracle within your development environment. The product to actually use for that is source control for, is schema compare for Oracle. Great thing about schema compare for Oracle is it compares databases. So schemas that can compare two schemas on the same database, compare schemas on different database, but it can also compare a database to a scripts folder. As you can imagine, it will be able to read the script folder that source control for Oracle creates. It can then deploy from a scripts folder to a database and vice versa. So this would be the product that you would use to update the test database from source control. I've got a very good question here. How does source control for Oracle handle two people editing the same object at the same time? It does have some basic conflict resolution built into the product. Essentially, what it will enable you to do is decide whether you want to take your copy of the object or the one in source control. So I guess it can only really work is if you've got two people checking in. It will say, okay, well, I'm going to take this copy, source control copy, or I'm going to take my local copy, and you'll be able to resolve it that way. Certainly, this is an area we do want to look in as more and more people are moving to distributed environments. This is certainly an area that we're going to put some work in. But a very good question. I think there's quite a lot we can do. We've already got feedback on this functionality, but it will. The important thing is, though, it will highlight that there is an object in conflict and give you the option to do something about that, rather than just whoever checks in. Whoever checks in second overwrites that object, if that makes sense. Question here, are packages checked out that will prevent other developers editing the package? So not explicitly from using source control for Oracle. I mean, I guess that will generally depend on the permissions that you have in place. But generally speaking, I mean, what source control for Oracle is doing, it's just helping you manage taking the changes from the database and putting it in source control. Any permissions that you have on particular objects in the database are going to be set within the database. And that's not something that you would do within source control for Oracle. So I guess in answer to your question is if you if you're working on an object, if you're working in a distributed environment and you apply new objects out source control into the database, whether somebody can actually then edit those objects afterwards is going to be dependent on the permissions that they have. So there isn't lock-in. So just, yeah, additional part to that question, there isn't a checkout lock on the package. We've had some great questions. Okay, and so can two people edit the package at the same time? So again, the editing will be at the within your environment, obviously. If two people are working on the same package at the same time, Obviously, if they're working in a shared environment, they will actually be working on exactly the same objects. There will still need to be some communication there in terms of who should be working on it at any one time. If the developers are working on a private copy of the schema, private copy of the database, it will, if somebody makes a change and then checks that in, somebody else, and before they check it in, somebody else is making a change, it will pick up that there's a conflict in terms of what would normally happen in that scenario. Let me just quickly bring up the product again. So if we're working in a scenario where we've got dedicated schemas, so like I have here, so I've got widget Michael, a widget James. If I was making some changes to a particular package, source control for Oracle is going to prompt me here to check it in. Once I've checked it in, Michael would receive it in his get latest. But if he's also working on that package, before he clicks on the apply selected changes to the database, there will be a warning here in the product to say that there is a conflict between the package that he has yet to check in to source control and the package that he was going to get for get latest. So that's generally how it would work. I guess working with a distributed, you'd always look to get the latest changes applied to your database before you started work. But in the scenario where two developers were working on the same package simultaneously, somebody's already checked it in, the other person working it in has come into source control for Oracle, they're just about to check it in. They thought, well, let's have a look at the get latest first. It would pick up that there was a conflict. Obviously, you can also go into the history and have a look down at last time particular objects were checked in, or what made up a group of a checking group. Look down at the individual objects and have a look at what that work was done. So it's going to give you that visibility there as well. And once again, in terms of what does it ask, it doesn't merge changes at the moment. It will ask you to decide on which version you want to use. So either your own version or the version that's in source control. And this is definitely an area that we know we need to make some improvements to really make it work for distributed environments. At the moment, though, as I mentioned, it does provide a lot of benefits in the sense that you will be able to get the latest changes before you start work, and you will be able to look through a history, and you will obviously be able to see. Unfortunately, I haven't got anything in here at the moment, but you will be able to look at the server-side view of the work that you're doing and what's different between that and the database. So the actual server-side diff is extremely useful to help out with that as well. So again, carrying on from this question, in terms of what you would actually need to do, so you get the latest version and then redo your changes. So that's one side of it. But if you were to look at that particular object, the get latest also has the side-by-side diff view as well. So if you look at the side-by-side view of what you're about to get, which somebody's already checked into source control, and what you've got on your local database, you can then look at that and decide, well, actually, the work that I've done is the work that needed to be done, and maybe is the most up-to-date work. So you're actually going to take your own, the version of that object on your database rather than taking the version in source control. So you do have that option. So you don't have to get the latest and then redo your changes. You may actually decide a better thing to do is to ignore what's in source control, take your copy, and then check that into source control. And that's what source control for Oracle is going to enable you to do. I hope that answered your question. So if you wanted, so if you wanted the last checked in changes, then unfortunately, again, you're going to need to you will need to make a decision for this particular object. You could obviously you'll be able to select exactly which changes to get, so you could get all other objects apart from this particular one. You may want to get all of the changes, apply them to your database. If you've kept a copy somewhere else of the work that you were doing, you could then apply that to that particular package as well. So as I mentioned before, I mean, the ideal scenario is merging ability. Currently, we don't support that, but we do highlight that there is a potential conflict, and that gives you the ability to decide what you want to do, whether you want to take the latest version, whether you want to take your own version, and if you do take the version from source control, you just need to be aware that it is going to overwrite the work that you've done, so you might want to keep a copy of that somewhere else and then apply that before you check it in again. It's certainly clear that working with a distributed environment, there still does need to be an element of communication between the team, but I hope that this product is going to help. So certainly you could do a manual merge in this case, yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you once again for attending, and thank you in particular for those of you that put some questions to me. I hope I did answer them okay. There were a few that I mentioned that I need to talk to one of the developers, so apologies for not being able to get to these particular questions for you. I will email you directly about those. If you do have any further questions, you will receive an email from me shortly when the video is up. If you want to go back over the video, please just simply reply to that email. I hope you did have a chance to check out our upcoming webinars. As I mentioned before, I do run a very extensive education program. So these are two webinars that are coming up. I would definitely recommend that you do register for those, and you can find out about those at redgate.com/oracle-webinars. I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation. Thank you again for joining me today, and I do hope that it's given you a bit of an insight to the product and kind of a nice insight to what you can achieve with it. Please do go to redgate.com/oracle and download a 28-day trial. Thank you, and I hope you have a nice rest of the day or a nice evening, depending on where you are. Thank you again.